Welcome. Welcome to our Muslim neighbors. Tommy, this is really a very exciting show, and I've been looking forward to it for a long time because really when you get down to it, our religions really are the reflection of a founding spiritual genius. In the case of Judaism, Moses and his connection to God, this special prophetic connection. Jesus as the Son of God for Christians. Buddha as the fundamental teacher of wisdom and enlightenment for Buddhists. Nunugara for the Sikhs. Guru Nanak, and of course Muhammad, the fundamental pillar, the teacher, the prophet, the guide, the key, the seal of the prophets, according to Muslims.
Mark, I'm like a lot of our viewers. I feel as though I don't know enough about Muhammad. I don't know enough about Islam. I don't know enough about the Quran. And I'm anxious about this series to see it and to do it with you, because I think a lot of us are in a learning mode. And I imagine many from the Muslim community feel the same way about Judaism and Christianity.
I'm sure they do. And you know, the best way to start, I think, is to understand the founder, understand the fundamental prophet of Islam, Muhammad, and we say in Judaism too, as all Muslims say, peace be upon him. We say that in Judaism about all the ones that we love and respect and revere, that Muhammad is for us, I think, and particularly for non-Muslims, the key to entering the understanding of Islam.
Well, we're going to learn about this man through a documentary that was done on his life called Muhammad, Legacy of a Prophet. Let's take a quick look at a clip.
1,400 years ago, a humble merchant who could not read or write changed the face of Arabia. His name was Muhammad. Today, his influence has spread to every corner of the world, including the United States. This is his story, and the story of millions of Americans who revere him as God's final prophet.
Joining us in the studio is Alex Kronemer, who joined forces with Michael Wolff to create and produce this enlightening documentary. Welcome.
Well, welcome. Thanks very much. I'm glad to be here.
How did doing this extraordinary documentary, and first of all, congratulations. The quality of it is just amazing, and I think it's not just beautifully done, but it's an important document, particularly in this post 9/11 world when there's so much misunderstanding about Islam. I understand that you actually had done most of the work on the documentary before 9/11 and then changed it. What changes were included?
Well, as a matter of fact, we were actually editing the film when 9/11 occurred. We were nearly completely done filming it, and then this terrible event happened. Initially, I thought that the program was going to be sunk,
Sure.
that there wouldn't be an interest. But as a matter of fact, it really struck us that it was more important now than ever. And the main thing that we really had to do, we had already made a decision to tell the story through the lives of American Muslims. So we knew we had to go back and reflect that event in those lives. And so we came back to New York and found a fireman, Muslim convert, who had been at the World Trade Center on that terrible day. And so he became a very large part of the program, and there was an interfaith event that we filmed, and so that's mainly how that got included.
Why did you decide to do the documentary?
Well, this is a man who changed world history in the space of a 23-year span, and it's a man who continues to influence the world today through the 1.2 billion Muslims who exist, and particularly in America, the 7 million Muslims. And we really felt that here was a person who is central to understanding history and central to understanding our Muslim neighbors, and yet very little knowledge here existed. So we thought this is the medium to work in, and it's an important story to tell.
You were also very lucky because actually, when you look at all the founders of the world's religions, we know more about Muhammad than any of the others. Moses, there's no external historical verification, and there's very little for Jesus and Buddha. Also, it's very difficult to know, except from Buddhist texts, what Buddha really was like and what Siddhartha Gautama was like. But Muhammad is a true historical figure that we really, really know a lot about.
And Mark, we're going to get the chance to learn more about Muhammad's birth and his upbringing.
According to Muslim sources, Muhammad bin Abdullah, or son of Abdullah, was born in the year 570 in the city of Mecca, in what is today Saudi Arabia. A poet of the times described Mecca as a place where winter and summer were equally intolerable. The world into which Muhammad arrived was a brutal one, defined by hunger, violence, and tribal warfare.
You could not exist without your tribe. An individual in this dangerous world had absolutely no chance of survival. And that meant that the tribe had become perhaps the most sacred value in Arabia.
It's a society that's based on the idea of vigilantism, that if somebody attacked my clan, then I have a right to go and attack anyone from his clan. They saw justice as taking revenge.
The Arabs of the 6th century had no written code of law, no common religion, and no central government. In this dangerous world, Muhammad had the good fortune to be born into Mecca's powerful tribe, the Quraysh. But his father died before he was born, and his mother died when he was only 6. His uncle, Abu Talib, was left to raise the young orphan.
He surely had to have worried about his future, what will he be? And so he must have been a very introspective child.
Tell me the qualities of Muhammad as a man that you most attribute his success in galvanizing, first of all, the political leadership of the tribes of Arabia, and then the spiritual leadership to create a new faith.
Well, I mean, I think what I learned in getting to know his life deeply is that, like many great leaders, he had a great capacity for empathy. And he was really able to connect with people and communicate with people where he found them and at whatever level they were. And I think that was one of the main ways that he was able to promote and push forward, because he was always able to tell the person and describe what he was experiencing in language that they could understand.
Tell us about the research you did to get the facts about his life.
Well, you mentioned earlier that we were lucky to have such a well-documented historical figure, but actually I often felt during the production we were very unlucky by that fact.
Because there's
so much.
Right.
And television, of course, is a medium of compression, and so what was really hard was choosing what facts we had available to really try to convey the essence of this man. And also, as our documentary developed, we realized that the man alone, you wouldn't know him. You had to know him also in how he impacted the community and continues to impact the Muslim community. And so it was trying to draw those particular things that would convey that was really the challenge in this.
Mm-hmm. When we return on Our Muslim Neighbors, we'll continue our discussion on Muhammad. So stay with us, and we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. Today we're learning about the Prophet Muhammad with Alex Kronemer, the the co-creator and producer of the documentary Muhammad, Legacy of the Prophet.
And joining us now to provide additional insight into Muhammad's life is our friend, the Imam of Masjid Al-Farah and founder of ASMA, the Sufi Society of America, our friend Imam Feisal Abdul Rauf. Faisal, how are you?
Good to be with you again.
It's just wonderful to have you here. We're trying to give people a fuller sense of the life of Muhammad. What are the most important qualities of his life that you want non-Muslims to understand?
Well, Muhammad came as a prophet, as you mentioned in the earlier segment. Every prophet had a genius, or a signature, if you will. So even within the message of Muhammad is really the message of all of the religions. And the signature of Muhammad embraced the signature of all of the prophets.
He was very inclusive in understanding God's revelation to the other prophets.
Yes. His message was not to come to establish a new religion, per se, but to really restate the religion of God that God revealed over and over again through different prophets. However, different prophets came with different signatures, if you will. So Moses, for example, came with a law. Jesus came to emphasize the spirit. You might say Buddha came to emphasize the way, or the spiritual path. Muhammad came with a message that embraced all
What was
of
his
these
signature?
aspects. It was all of them. So he came with the law. He came with the spirit. He came with the way. He came with a method of constructing society according to a system of law, in a method and with an understanding that would be valid for all times and all climes.
Was he considered by those around him to be a man, an extraordinary man, or a spiritual leader?
All of them. From the Muslim point of view, the Prophet Muhammad maintained or discharged three roles. In the beginning in Mecca, it was primarily as a prophet, and the prophet's role is to be a spiritual guide, a spiritual teacher, a spiritual master, a spokesman for God, to remind people to, as John the Baptist did, to change their evil ways and to walk in the path of God. After the emigration called the Hijrah to Medina, then additional roles came upon him. The role of being a head of state, the role of being a Supreme Court judge, to judge on issues that in society. So these roles all combined in his person, which was part of the challenge as to what happened after his death.
We're now going to take a look at a clip from the documentary on a significant event in Muhammad's life, referred to as the Night of Ascension.
The story goes that one night he was sleeping near the Kaaba, and he was woken from sleep by Gabriel, who mounted him on a burak, a magical steed, and they flew from Mecca to Jerusalem. And then he began an ascent up through the seven heavens to the divine throne. At every stage of the heavens, he meets various prophets of the past. He meets Abraham, he meets Jesus and John the Baptist, he meets Moses. And finally, he enters into the divine presence, and there the sources are silent, because when you enter into the presence of God, you've gone beyond words.
And he receives from God the highest form of knowledge and truth, and many injunctions of the religion itself, including the final form of the daily prayers.
There is a powerful sense that Muhammad brings us that the teachings of other religions are part of God's will and part of God's way of teaching us the way to spiritual liberation and freedom. But there is a tremendous difference in the way Judaism views Moses and Islam views Muhammad and the way Christianity views Jesus. Let's talk about that a minute. Muhammad remained for Muslims always just a man, not, of course, a prophet, the great seal of the prophets, but never, like Jesus, something of the substance of God, a divine figure, a Messiah of that sort. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And in fact, this was even pointed out in the very phrasing of the testimony of faith. We are required to bear witness that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God.
The Shahada,
The Shahada.
the basically.
And you would call God Allah.
Allah, which is the same that it's an Arabic word for God, which both Arab-speaking Jews and Arab-speaking Christians use.
Yeah, El in Hebrew, Elohim, El is the same as Allah.
It's the same word, like Eloi, Eloi lima sabaqtani would be Ilahi, Ilahi lima sabaqtani in Arabic, which is what the language that Jesus used, presumably on the cross. But the second part of the Shahada, that we bear witness that Muhammad is messenger of God, is almost added there to emphasize that he is human and that God alone is divine.
Now, most people know about the structure in Jerusalem because it's so incredibly beautiful, the Golden Dome. That covers this rock where the horse Barak, the magical horse, Muhammad's steed, leapt up to heaven. Isn't that what it is?
Yes.
To be?
Yes. I mean, it's just like, the Native American Indians used to call the train an iron horse.
Yes.
So, I mean, he probably took some kind of a plane from
sure.
Mecca to Jerusalem, some kind
definitely.
of a spaceship. But in the language of the time, they would use such imagery of a horse, but whether it was actually a horse or some kind of a
Right.
vehicle that he rode in.
Let's talk about the teachings of Muhammad. I think there's probably no area that's more greatly misunderstood than the teachings of Muhammad, particularly after 9/11, and particularly in the distortions that some preachers have offered of Islam that really this show is intended to counteract. Tell us about Muhammad's view of violence and of compassion and peace.
Well, the word Islam means submission to God. It's from the word salam, which is the same word as in Hebrew shalom, which means peace. It is about attaining peace both internally between oneself and one's creator, and also peace and harmony in a community. The unfolding of that in the form of a structure of values that a society will govern itself by, which is really both the first two commandments, or the major two commandments in the Abrahamic faith traditions, to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul, etc., and to love for our fellow human being what we love for ourselves. The second commandment is where the rub lies, or the difficulty lies. How do we manifest this second commandment of treating our fellow human being in a way that is consonant with how the Creator wants us to live? This is where the challenges have unfolded. In every incident throughout human history, whenever a prophet came, he was chased out of town, he was crucified, he was stoned, he was rejected. And so the challenge has always been for God's religion is how will such a community be established and anchored and protected.
When we return, we'll continue to learn more about Islam's prophet, Muhammad, and we'll find out how he's taught in colleges today. So stay with us on Our Muslim Neighbors.
Prophet Muhammad was a man, he's flesh and blood, who brought one of the most eloquent revelations to mankind. He's set an example to mankind through his behavior, through his actions, a living example. This is a legacy that he's left for Muslims.
Welcome back to Our Muslim Neighbors. Today we're learning about Islam's Prophet Muhammad, and joining us now is Daniel Martin Varisco, the professor of anthropology at Hofstra University. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us. That bump that we came into, that little part that we just saw was?
That was Kevin James, New York fireman and a Muslim who, in our program, talks a lot about the impact of 9/11 on the Muslims living in this country.
Very important, because people think all Muslims are Arabs, and that's not true. No. All Arabs are Muslims, but not all Muslims are Arabs.
Well, actually, not all. It's also not true that all Arabs are Muslims. There's
There's Christian Arabs.
Approximately 15% of all Arabs are Christians, and in fact, most Arab Americans are Christians.
That's
Daniel,
interesting.
In terms of your course at Hofstra, who attends the courses? Is it primarily Muslims or non-Muslims?
Yeah, well, we have a course called Islam, taught out of our Philosophy and Religious Studies department, and I've taught it twice, and the first time was before 9/11, and I would say 3/4 of the students were Muslim from various parts of the world, not just from Arab countries. And then I taught it last fall, obviously after 9/11, and I would say probably majority Catholic, because we have, including some from Kellenberg here, we have a sizable Catholic percentage. So we have quite a range of students.
And they were curious now. That change obviously is because non-Muslims now want to make up their own mind about what Islam teaches.
Oh, it's very interesting because I'm always curious about what they want to learn. The first class I say, okay, what do you want to know about Muhammad? What do you want to know about Islam? Well, after 9/11, I think the main issue was, is Islam really a violent religion? Was Muhammad really someone who spread his faith by the sword, and if you didn't agree, you got your head chopped off? And obviously coming from all of the media representation.
What do you teach about Muhammad?
Well, I try to cover the bases. We're a university, so we're not just giving what Muslims believe. So I first of all teach them some of the outrageous things that have been said against Muhammad historically, and then I give them sort of the basic background, the story of Muhammad's life, taken primarily, most of the information we have is from a biography by a man named Ibn Ishaq, written about 100 years after the death of Muhammad, and it goes into great details. It includes the traditions, the hadith, the statements that the Prophet made that have been retold by individuals. And at that point, it was about 3 generations after the Prophet. And that's our main source of material.
Mm-hmm. The idea of Muhammad's teachings in a non-Muslim country like America, what are the parts of the teachings that you find hospitable in the minds of your students, and what teachings do you find are challenging for your students?
Well, the concept of jihad, this idea that is there a justification in Islam to go out and kill people? That's a difficult concept, obviously, for people in this country to deal with. So I want to take it, straight on, and I do it by looking at how did the Prophet Muhammad actually fight. After he left Mecca, he was forced out of Mecca. He went to Medina. He was there for 8 years. There were a series of raids and small battles that were conducted, 39 overall. Of those, Muhammad only participated in 27 of them, not in every one of them. And there were only about 9 that involved any kind of fighting. So most of the time, Muhammad was seeking alliances. He was persuading people through his moral message. And by the end of, he was 8 years in exile. At the end of that time, without any military victories, any sizable military victories, he came back to Mecca with 10,000 followers, and there was not a single drop of blood shed.
We're going to take a look at one final clip on Muhammad's life.
On a small hill called the Mount of Mercy, Muhammad gave his final sermon.
Here is a man who began his mission as this individual in Mecca, persecuted with almost no followers, and his life is completed with a valley filled with tens of thousands of people that have accepted his message, and there he is preaching to them his final sermon, and in it, in a sense, is a summation of this universal teaching.
He tells them to be good to each other and not to violate each other's rights.
for men and women to treat each other humanely, for brothers and sisters to treat each other well, and for Muslims to treat each other as brothers and sisters. And perhaps most importantly, he calls an end to revenge, to blood killing, to the vendetta, which has bled this culture terribly. This is a man of faith who is unsure of his effects. This is a very human moment in which he needs to know and he asks. And the people affirm that yes, 3 times they say, yes, you have fulfilled your mission.
It strikes me, Tommy, about Jesus at Calvary and Moses at Mount Nebo and Muhammad at Arafat, that the ends of these world-changing lives are filled with a certain amount of doubt about whether they've had impact. Perhaps that's one of the things that made them so great.
Well, certainly religion leads us from pain to greatness to healing. And the leaders themselves had to go through the same thing.
Daniel, Alex, what are the most important teachings of Muhammad that you take into your own teachings and your own life?
Well, I think if you look at the sense of Islam itself as a religion of submission, but submission and peace, and the moral message of getting along with other people and overcoming those conflicts that are just natural in society.
Well, for me, it's something Muhammad once said that will be very familiar to your viewers, I believe, and that's, he said that no one is truly a believer if he does not love for his fellow man what he loves for himself. And to me, that's really is the essence of what his teaching is about and why he continues to inspire millions of people around the world for good.
What all our teachings are about.
Yes.
No
Mark,
question.
we've been fortunate to have such great guests, Alex, Daniel, and of course the Imam. I feel as though I'm getting closer and closer to understanding the beauty of Islam. In each show that we do, it seems as though there's another aspect that I've wondered about but didn't know enough about. And that's how I feel today about Muhammad. I've learned some things about Muhammad that are important. How about yourself?
It is an extraordinary thing to see a life that's bigger than any other life. And very few human beings have ever changed the world by the force of their compassion, their mercy, and their understanding of the power of God. Muhammad was one.
I'm Father Tom Hartman.
And I'm Rabbi Mark Gelman.
We're the God Squad. God bless you.